The Sunday sun scorched the red earth of the Sierra de Badiraguato, deep in the heart of Sinaloa. At Rancho Las Nubes, the Clouds Ranch, the smell of charcoal-grilled meat and the vibrant sound of a mariachi band filled the dry air. It was the 75th birthday of Don Hector Castillo, a man with completely white hair and skin leathery from decades of relentless sun. He sat at the head of the long table, with a serenity that contrasted sharply with the region's violent reputation. 22 family members, sons, daughters-in-law and grandchildren, were celebrating joyfully, oblivious to the fact that 3 black armored SUVs were climbing the dirt road, kicking up a sinister cloud of dust that foreshadowed a storm. It was 3:30 p.m. when the vehicles braked hard in front of the heavy oak main gate. The band's music stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was heavy, dense, broken only by the metallic slamming of doors. 8 men descended, armed with AR-15 assault rifles, tactical vests, and the emblem of the Los Escorpiones cartel on their chests. The leader, a man with an ugly scar across his neck known as El Buitre, the vulture, walked up to the table uninvited, kicking an empty chair with arrogance. "Nice party, old man," El Buitre said, pointing the barrel of his rifle directly at Don Hector's forehead. "But it seems you forgot to pay the protection tax. It's 100,000 pesos right now, or this party turns into a mass funeral." The younger children began to cry, clinging to their mother's legs. Hector's sons, 4 robust men standing by the grill, froze with carving knives in their hands. Don Hector didn't blink. He took a slow sip of his aged tequila, placed the glass gently on the table, and looked into the hitman's eyes. "This ranch is all I have, son. I don't have money for bandits." El Buitre laughed, a dry, cruel cackle that echoed under the patio roof. "Then we'll take the women and children. Maybe that way you'll find the money fast." He waved his hand, signaling his men to surround the grandchildren. It was in that precise moment that El Buitre made the deadliest mistake of his life. He saw only an old peasant and a frightened family. He didn't see Hector's military boots, perfectly polished despite the dust. He didn't notice that the 4 sons weren't trembling with fear, but calculating angles of vision and distances. And above all, he didn't know that Don Hector wasn't a simple cattle rancher, but General Hector Castillo, a living legend of the Mexican Special Forces, retired from service, but never retired from war. El Buitre continued to smile, intoxicated by a false sense of absolute power. "You have 10 seconds, old man. Tick-tock." Don Hector sighed deeply, looking like a man defeated by age. He brought his right hand to his face, as if to wipe sweat from his forehead. But the movement was deliberate and precise. He touched his left earlobe twice. That was the signal. A signal his sons had known and practiced since they learned to walk. It meant imminent lethal threat, neutralize without mercy. What happened next was so fast that the hitmen's brains, numbed by drugs and arrogance, could barely process it. Carlos, the eldest son and a former lieutenant colonel, drew a Glock 19 hidden in his waistband under his linen guayabera. In one fluid motion he fired 2 shots to the chest and 1 to the head of the hitman closest to the children. Simultaneously, Javier, a former military intelligence agent, threw a barbecue knife straight into the throat of the man guarding the exit. Don Hector, with agility impossible for his 75 years, grabbed the barrel of El Buitre's rifle, twisted it aside, and delivered a devastating strike to the leader's trachea, dropping him to the ground. "Get down!" screamed Sophia, the youngest daughter-in-law and a former Federal Highway Police officer, as she pulled a compact submachine gun from her diaper bag and subdued 2 hitmen attempting to flee toward the trucks. In exactly 7 seconds, the scenario had radically changed. 5 hitmen were dead or neutralized in the dirt. 3 were on their knees, with weapons pointed at their heads. El Buitre, now coughing blood on the dusty ground, looked up in pure terror. The old man was standing over him, holding the rifle that had threatened him seconds before. "You, "Who are you?" gurgled El Buitre. "I am the man who cleaned up the northern border in the 90s, Hector replied, cold as ice. "And you just invaded the wolf pack's den, thinking you were the wolf." But the victory was abruptly interrupted. Javier, who was checking the radios of the fallen hitmen, went pale. "Dad, we intercepted a comm. This group was just the vanguard. The plaza boss, El Alacran, the Scorpion, is heading this way. He heard the shots over the open radio. They are sending a heavy convoy. 20 men, high-caliber weaponry. They arrive in 10 minutes. The family looked at each other. They could try to flee and abandon the ranch to the flames, or they could stay and fight. "Open the arsenal," General Castillo ordered with a commanding voice. "Today, no one eats dinner until we take out the trash." Rancho Las Nubes transformed into an impregnable fortress in a matter of minutes. There was no panic, no screaming or crying, just pure military discipline. The children were quickly ushered into the reinforced concrete underground shelter, built years ago for hurricanes and for dark days like this. The women, all trained in self-defense and tactical shooting, assumed sniper positions at the second-floor windows with precision rifles. Don Hector led his sons to the secret arsenal hidden behind the wine cellar. From there, they emerged equipped for war. Level 4 body armor, German G-36 rifles, smoke grenades, and armor-piercing ammunition. "Carlos, I want you on the roof, north sector. Javier, place the directional mines at the main entrance. Miguel, take the light machine gun and cover the left flank," Hector commanded. He was no longer the birthday grandfather. He was the general on his battlefield. As the sun began to set, staining the Sinaloa sky blood red, the sound of heavy diesel engines resonated in the valley. The Los Escorpiones convoy arrived with fury. 4 homemade armored trucks, monstros, and 25 men armed to the teeth, ready to massacre a peasant family. They expected screams and pleas. What they found was a sepulchral silence. As soon as the first vehicle crossed the gate arch, Javier detonated the improvised explosive charge. The explosion flipped the lead truck, blocking the only exit. Chaos seized the attackers. "Fire at will!" Hector's voice echoed over the tactical radio. From the roof, Carlos fired with surgeon-like precision, eliminating the drivers and gunners. From the windows, the daughters-in-law created an impenetrable crossfire barrier that prevented the hitmen from advancing toward the main house. The criminals, used to intimidating unarmed civilians and corrupt police, found themselves trapped in a tactical kill zone designed by experts. They fired blindly, wasting ammunition against the stone walls, while the Castillo family fired to kill. "El Alacran!" The gang leader shouted desperate orders while sheltering behind an armored car, realizing too late that he had fallen into a deadly trap. He tried to flank the house through the garden, but ran straight into Don Hector, who was waiting for him in the side courtyard, wielding an antique Colt .45 pistol with ivory grips, spotless and lethal. The firefight lasted 18 minutes, but it felt like an eternity under the crossfire. When the dust finally settled, the silence of the Sierra de Sinaloa returned, now mixed with the acrid smell of burnt gunpowder and spilled diesel. 28 hitmen had entered the ranch's perimeter with murderous intent. None walked out on their own feet. The sirens of the National Guard and the Marines sounded in the distance, arriving late as usual, but this time their intervention was unnecessary. The guard captain, upon entering the ranch with his troops and seeing the carnage of the region's most wanted criminals piled in the courtyard, took off his cap in a sign of respect. He immediately recognized the white-haired man cleaning his weapon. "General Castillo," the captain said, looking at the bodies of El Alacran and his entourage. "It seems you've done our dirty work, General." "Someone had to do it, Captain. They threatened my grandchildren," Hector replied, wiping soot from his face with a handkerchief. The family slowly gathered in the central courtyard. They were dirty, with some superficial scratches and adrenaline still pumping through their veins, but they were all alive. From the underground shelter, the youngest granddaughter, Maria, 6 years old, ran and hugged her grandfather's legs. Don Hector dropped his weapon and lifted the girl into his arms. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear of combat, but from the strain of age and the emotion of seeing her safe. The birthday cake, miraculously intact amidst the confusion under the patio roof, was still on the main table. "I think we still have a birthday to celebrate, Dad," said Carlos, the eldest son, with a tired smile as he engaged the safety on his weapon. That night, the story of the Ranch of the Generals spread throughout Mexico like wildfire. The cartels learned a brutal and necessary lesson. There are doors that should not be kicked down, and old men who should not be threatened. Don Hector cut the cake, surrounded by the family he had transformed into a small elite army. He knew the peace in Sinaloa was temporary and that they might try to return. But he looked at his children and grandchildren and felt immense pride. They were not victims. They were warriors. And as long as a Castillo was standing and breathing, that ranch would be the safest place and the most dangerous for their enemies in all of Mexico.